And with that, I think we're just about ready to roll. And we're gonna get right into the meat of the topics this morning. I think that's what you're here to listen to and react to. And so we're going to get going in that aspect right from the start. We are honored today to have two tremendous professionals with us that are working a project that's tough and important and critical. One is Brigadier General Rob Parker, U.S. Army Deputy Director for the J6 at the Joint Staff. And the other, to my left, is Brigadier General Jeff Valencia, call sign Spaniard. He's the Air Force's Director of Joint Force Integration and the Deputy Chief of Strategy, Integration and Requirements. Both of these senior officers are focused on JADC2. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to General Parker just for some brief comments, and we'll get right into some questions this morning.
Hey, Mike, thanks so much. Before I get started, I'd really like to just extend my sincere gratitude to AFCEA, for our industry partners that help support these types of events, extremely meaningful, and specifically to General Shea and also General Skinner. Seeing everybody come together this morning, I missed out yesterday, but what I've seen so far today is really phenomenal, and I'm glad to see everybody starting to get back together and really interact and start the networking necessary, not only to move forward, but also to gain a better understanding and exchange really important ideas that are out there right now in a variety of areas, both within DoD and importantly external to DoD. My job right now, I serve as the Deputy J6 on the Joint Staff, but I also serve as the chair for the DepSecDef's JADC2 cross-functional team. So as part of that CFT, I've spent much of the past year working with a lot of great teammates like General Valencia, as we've tried to collectively look across the department, look across the joint force and the services, and really bring about order to the chaos that's been out there. And I think everybody that can sort of think through what JADC2 maybe is or isn't, as you think through that, everybody has a little bit of a different perspective. I would like to think that collectively we're closer now than we were maybe 18 months ago. And so I always like to give a little bit of background because sometimes people maybe aren't as familiar or clear with some of the things happening in the building. So if we think back to 2019, some of the Air Force leadership really came forward to the JROC with this idea of multi-domain command and control, and is really, working through multiple dilemmas, multiple domains. And as that came forward to this joint body, if you're not familiar with the JROC, it's the Vice Chairman, Joint Chief of Staff, it's the service vices, other senior leaders are occasionally part of that body that are really deciding and validating requirements and capabilities across the force. And so as this came through, it was quickly recognized by that body that it was more than just multi-domain, and it was bigger than just one service. And so that's really where we saw Joint All-Domain Command and Control come forward. And from that point, that body directed not only the stand-up of a governance body and process, which eventually became the cross-functional team, but really pulled it up not only to a joint level, but it actually, because the impacts are so broad, brought up to a department level. And so sometimes that's where you get a little bit of the confusion out there. Sometimes you'll still see in print or you'll hear people refer to as the Air Force as the lead for JADC2. So it's not inaccurate that to say 2019 timeframe, they were the original push to bringing that forward, but then it transitioned. What the Air Force, Department of the Air Force still retains, so, and we'll talk about in just a minute, is responsibility for the supporting concept to the joint warfighting concept of JCC2, and we'll speak to that in just a minute. When I talk about bringing order to the chaos, the efforts that we've put forward over the past year have come forward with a SecDef-signed strategy for JADC2, identifying our 5 key lines of effort that many of you are already aware of, from data, the human element, the technology, nuclear command and control, and then importantly, the mission partner environment. As we move forward through the year, we had a revised charter for the CFT. That CFT is a very large working body that really sets the table to the fullest extent possible in terms of we have our OSD partners, we have all our services, combatant command representatives, other government agencies, and importantly, our 5I partners who've been there all along, helping us as we develop our products. We share our strategy, we share other key artifacts and documents that we've been working on. So what's really important is the development of the initial posture review. We went out to all the combatant commands and looked at their C2 capabilities that they determined were necessary in their integrated priority list. We looked at their urgent operational needs, their emergent operational needs, and other strategic documents. As we went through this, that went through the JROC and was ultimately signed by the DepSecDef. So when we think about where are the requirements, where is the focus for JADC2, that's where you find that. We've worked further to develop a reference architecture. We're on version 3 now. That's a complementary effort to what's going on with the joint warfighting concept. Many people will ask, is it JWC or JADC2? I would offer to you, anytime you speak to either of those, you should be inclusive of the other. They're mutually interdependent. They support each other. The joint warfighting concept provides the SecDef's vision for the future joint warfight. It's validated and supported through global integrated exercises. JADC2 helps to deliver that vision today, meaning through crisis, not only crisis, but also as we think competition, crisis, and conflict. As we work through that, we've continued with the development that SecDef directed the implementation plan for the strategy to be put forward. I'm happy to say that as of yesterday, that's gone through the Vice Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and is en route this week to the DepSecDef. Tomorrow, General Valencia, myself, will join the Vice Chairman, other service leads, and Dr. Fletcher from CIO as we go over to the Hill to provide the first JADC2 testimony that is now required as part of a quarterly comeback to the Hill to provide them an understanding of both where we are in the process and where we're going. Outcome-based. We spent a lot of the past year working artifacts, trying to get governance, bring order, bring the team together. We think we've made good progress with that. We're getting great support from the Hill. We're getting great support in the building. Senior leadership, services are aligning. We're working well together right now. As you've heard in many venues, though, the challenges come when you start tightening that down, when you start making selections for certain best-of-breed capabilities out there, when you start really getting into needing a capability that supports an all-domain fight. So there's certainly some friction to come, but we're very positive and encouraged in the direction we're going, and I look forward to today's questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. General Valencia, some opening remarks, sir.
Yeah, good morning. First of all, I'd like to echo the appreciation to ASCII and particularly to you, Mike, to give us the opportunity. So I sit here today, as Rob laid out, I represent as the Air Force's the lead service partner with the J6 to develop the joint concept for command and control, but I also sit here today as a lead on behalf of the Department of the Air Force for Advanced Battle Management System. And as Rob laid out, as JADC2 was maturing and coming into its own, Advanced Battle Management System was doing the same, and that's contributed to some of the confusion that Rob is talking about. So remember that Advanced Battle Management System began as Air Battle Management System, which is a replacement for the JSTARS. So think single platform, think single domain, think highly vulnerable against the sort of adversaries of which we're preparing to go against. And the Department of the Air Force had the realization that we have to get away from this single platform, single domain solution to command and control and start thinking all domain, start thinking multiple platforms, systems of systems type of approach. And we went from air battle management to advanced battle management. At the same time, we launched into a bit of a discovery of, is this even possible? Can we take advantage of existing technologies today, and can we imagine them in a new way applied to a military context? And frankly, the conclusion from that was yes. And so what we started about a year ago was the operationalization of Advanced Battle Management System. And now we've organized the Air and the Space Force along with identifying a lead PEO, which is the Department of Air Force Rapid Capabilities Office, to start bringing to bear these capabilities and putting them into the warfighter's hands today. And so enough with the wave tops. We're more interested in addressing your guys' questions, so thank you.
Great, thank you very much. And for those of you standing out there, there is plenty of seats up here. We're going to be up here for a while. If you want to come have a seat, please do. If not, you're happy to stand. We want to drill into some of the blocking and tackling areas of JADC2, make sure we have a common understanding by everybody here. So the first question that we'd like to discuss this morning is how Joint Cyber Command and Control, or JCC2, and Joint All-Domain Command and Control, JADC2, differ. As we have leads for both efforts, as I just mentioned, will you walk us through how JCC2 and JADC2 complement each other and enable the way forward for command and control in the department?
Yeah, Mike, let me take a swing at that first. And I'd just like to clarify for the audience, because I know we are at a cyber event here, and you know, some in the audience may be thinking what Mike said, the cyber piece for C2. Normally what we're addressing in this type of forum, and the confusion, is the joint concept for command and control, which aligns as one of the 4 supporting concepts under the current JWC 1.0. So you have the joint combined fires, you have contested logistics, information advantage, and then JCC2. And so as we think about differentiating those to JADC2, back to what I was teeing up earlier, JADC2 is really about establishing a framework. Sometimes you'll hear folks talk about a specific network or a device. That's not what it is. JADC2 is about establishing the framework necessary to allow the department to move from a network-centric to a data-centric environment. And without getting into, you know, a lot of buzzwords or bumper stickers, I mean, it really is the sense, make sense, and act piece of that. And as I said, it's mutually informing. Many of the things that John Valencia will speak to you about that he's doing under his services lead effort on JCC2 are very complementary to what's happening within the CFT. We exchange information regularly and help inform one another. But JADC2 really is about delivering outcomes today that support the joint warfighting concept. And as today, currently 4 of those supporting concepts. That may change in the future, and we're absolutely okay with that. JADC2 is agnostic to a joint warfighting concept. The basic ideas of exposing data, bringing it together to generate information advantage, decision advantage using AI, machine learning, predictive analytics, and driving a faster OODA loop with higher quality decisions for our commanders. That's really what we're trying to get after right now.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Just to build on what Rob laid out, when we start talking about the joint concept for command and control, we've heard the bumper sticker decision advantage. Well, what we're really trying to get after from the services perspective is what does that mean and how does it translate to warfighting? And we have to start thinking about how decisions are made at different levels. And the JCC2 begins by looking at decisions that are really made at the combatant command level. And so a decision that's made within one geographic combatant command, how is that going to be dependent upon a decision made in another geographic combatant command? And what we have found today is we don't share data across combatant commands in a real-time sense so that they can understand that dependency in one decision's dependency to the other. For example, just because we have a conflict or potentially just a crisis emerge within a geographic combatant command, say Indo-PACOM, that doesn't mean that NORTHCOM's going to sleep. NORTHCOM has some very important demands and some very important decisions that they have to be made. The JCC2 builds out the interconnectedness. This drives the dependency on the development of capabilities. We hand them to the JADC2 CFT, and the JADC2 CFT then decides what is the best of the breed of the capabilities, and now I put my hat on as a service representative here, and then the services, we go out, identify how we can field and operationalize that capability to ultimately change how we make decisions in warfare.
Yeah, if I can make one quick follow-up. You know, a lot of times when we have discussions on JADC2 and particularly JCC2, depending on who we're speaking with, they immediately default to sensor to shooter, which is absolutely a piece of it, but there's a whole significant other portion of the JADC2 framework and discussion that really goes to what General Valencia was saying. If you think of the recent NEO operations in Afghanistan, that was a huge data problem. As you think about trying to track personnel, aircraft, logistics from literally the tactical edge all the way to strategic national levels, to be able to apply the concepts and ideas and technology we're talking about now, many would think, hey, we're just going to bring this tool in, it's going to extract data from some of our programs of record that are well established, we'll take a look at that, we'll populate it, we'll make some good decisions. That's not where we are today. The Afghanistan operation taught us that as a department, we really don't understand or know where our authoritative data sources are. Many of the things and ideas that we've been talking and even directives that have come out from our OSD leadership and how data will be managed, how it will be shared, that was laid wide open. We literally had to use scraping tools to go out to pull from tactical level entries into various chats to assimilate the best data possible, compare it to what we had in programs of record, and then use these systems to massage that data to help give predictive analytics and understanding to our key leaders across the services, combatant commands, and ultimately up to the national level.
We've heard the term technology used here a few times already here this morning, and we know that that's certainly going to be a topic. So there's no doubt it's going to be a technology challenge formulating what JADC2 will ultimately look like. What's your sensing of how this concept is evolving or developing, and what do you see as the greatest challenge to get to this point?
Yeah, Mike, thank you. I think anybody that was listening in my opening remarks, when I talked about the lines of effort, talked about LOE number 2, the human element. That talks about how our forces are designed, how information training happens, the quality of our force that we have out there that's going to be utilizing the technology. And so much like other areas, we really think through this in terms of both the human dimension, sort of a policy direction, and then the technology. I don't want to underplay any of the technology challenges that are out there, but I really think probably as many of you, technology's out there. It's just a matter of bringing it into play in the right areas and the right ways. To do that, we have to make some adjustments to policy. Certainly, some of those adjustments today would make life easier for all of us, both on industry side as well as the DoD side, to rapidly integrate and bring these capabilities together in a meaningful way. I am confident, though, back to that Afghan example, when we determined that we had information that we need to share with our partners, at the most senior levels in the department, we had those policy decisions made very quickly that allowed that. So even though we may not be happy with them today and we're working toward getting better policy, I am confident that when the time comes, our senior leaders get it and will make those decisions. The piece that bothers me and concerns me is really the human element. Some would call that the culture. If I think back to my War College days of fear, honor, interest, we normally think about that right at international levels, nations, states, that lead to great power competition, those types of things. When I apply that to organizations within the department, services, and even individuals, I think it's very reflective of where some of the real challenges are. My boss, Lieutenant General Crowell, would say our senior leadership gets it. They know where we need to go with JADC2. They know where we need to go with the joint warfighting concept. Lower levels, they're all for it. They're ready to act and do somewhere in that crunchy middle layer is a little bit of the problem. And so when I say fear, honor, and interest, I would transcribe that to meaning fear is based on trust. If I don't trust what you're bringing to the table as part of this joint fight, whether you're in another service, whether you're industry, then I'm not extending that reciprocity on the network that I've been told that I should be extending. that is precluding our ability to advance. When I think about honor, I think about organizations and individuals that have the not made here mentality. The, hey, we've got it, we've worked really hard, we've got the solution here, I hear what you're doing over there, but we need to move out with this now, and they're not willing to accept others. And then interest certainly comes down to resourcing. Everything in the building, as you know, goes off resourcing. Once you have it, you don't want to let go of it. You want to keep that funding stream coming. And sometimes that causes decisions, personal and organizational decisions, that are not in the best interest of the department overall.
I think, actually, Mike, I'd also like to dive in, but I'm going to put on a service hat here and get really specific into what vexes us. And what vexes us is legacy interoperability as we're developing these new capabilities. We can't just leave our old fleet behind. And as we look at the emergence of software programmable radios, we look at multiple waveform apertures, and we look at these capabilities that are coming online as we're looking at a horizon, we can't strip out the past, because we're still going to fight with many of the weapons that we have currently in our inventory today, not just tomorrow, but for several years from now. But we have a different sensitivity today. So in the past, many of these weapon systems were built and have unbelievable data within them, but then they're locked. It's locked down, and we can't tap into that data. And so now what we find ourselves is the proprietary locks of old legacy systems, which albeit were built under that requirement, is we need to unlock that data. Because we are finding that much of the data we need to make very fast decisions, very high fidelity decisions exists. We just can't get it extracted out of these platforms fast enough into a decision maker. And so we are vexed by this problem. Let's not be confused. We are not clearly just putting our eyes on the horizon. We are looking at the toys in the toolbox today and trying to figure out how we can meet both demands.
That's a great discussion. It leads me to a little bit of an offshoot for General Parker. Sir, how are you receiving feedback from the services? Are you seeing a teaming concept forming on the solution as you go forward? Or do you see stovepipes out there that are going to be hard to break?
I'd say up front, absolutely, stovepipes exist. I think everyone acknowledges that. What I would say, and I'm particularly encouraged by, is really the attitude of team play that's being brought into the CFT. I mentioned our diverse stakeholders that are in there, and it's not just coming to a monthly meeting in the Pentagon. Right now we have 5 very focused working groups in their capabilities development, research and engineering, a data-focused group, an assessment group that's out there, and then also an acquisition focus. We're bringing in a transport group. This is going to help us lead that, and it's within those working groups that I think we see the greatest benefit. Any of those meet once, twice a month, maybe more often, and they're usually populated with 100, 150 individuals representing very diverse stakeholder organizations that contribute to real outcomes like development of the reference architecture that everyone's going to have to conform to, development of other efforts that are out there aligned with each of our respective LOEs. With the implementation plan coming forward, we see new ownership picking up of those so that we'll have organizational leads to help drive us to the future. So right now I remain very optimistic. I think we've not seen more cooperation in the building and across the force in many years than we are now.
Right. Was the Air Force feel that way?
Stovepipes are comfortable. Let's not kid ourselves. We have a group of Joint Chiefs. We have some service secretaries that will not allow it. They will not allow it. And they are driving us to work together. And frankly, many of the people in this room who represent our industry partners oftentimes help to tie us together in ways that we didn't know we had a coincidence of effort. And so without a doubt, every conversation we have with our senior leadership is tell me how you are working within others. And if you're different, which different is okay. Let's not be confused. Different is okay. Just know why you're different. Don't be different just because it's comfortable.
Right. Thank you very much. I appreciate those comments on both sides. Let's dive down a little bit into what's taking place out there right now. What kinds of tests have been taken or will be taken or conducted to test and evaluate JADC2, and whether there really is a single network that can be responsive and available to the joint forces?
Okay, let me work from backwards and pull it back up. I think y'all have heard me this morning. I've certainly said on many other occasions, there is no single network. I think probably the best description of that you probably heard recently, if you went to Gerald Morrison's comments this morning and heard him describe the idea of the unified network that the Army's put forth. It's certainly not singular to the Army from a joint perspective across all the services. You know, we're building the framework with the interoperability necessary to really move from this aspirational level, multi-level classification, down vertically and then horizontally as we look across not only service domains, combatant command, warfighting networks, mission areas, but importantly our mission partner environment, which is really the core of what we are trying to accomplish with JADC2. You've heard numerous senior leaders say, we will not fight alone. We know that instinctively. We've got to be very intentional about building that in from the get-go. How do we evaluate our services and others compliant with JADC2, and what does that really mean? I spoke briefly to the idea of the reference architecture that's being developed. Increasingly, about every 6 months, we're getting tighter on that. We're on version 3 right now. That's starting to drive some very specific requirements. Some of you in industry who may have gone out to receive some information from the vice chairman and the Joint Staff J7 when they presented an industry day on the joint warfighting concept. They distributed some of the JROC strategic documents, and those are a little higher level, more broad, but they align with each of the supporting concepts we've discussed this morning. When you think of JADC2 enabling all of those supporting concepts, that's really where you're getting into more specifics in the reference architecture. Where will you in industry see that? You'll see that reflected through both program managers in each of the services as they go out to work with you either directly or in group settings to ask you to come in to help in the development or contribute to the capabilities necessary and systems needed to bring about JADC2 as envisioned. I mentioned we have an assessments division within the J6 right now. That's also part of our working group. We use that team. In fact, they're actively out right now with Project Convergence, taking a look at that, seeing what lessons are being learned, what they can bring back to the CFT, looking for those pockets of excellence that are out there. They've been involved with other services and combatant commands. Gone to Northcom recently, Stratcom, with both the GDI and GUIDE efforts as we look into that. Specifically bringing it back into where are we now and moving forward. The idea of having a key performance parameter, something like that, we think is probably not going to work for JADC2. There's certainly aspects of that. What we're leaning to right now, many of you who work in the cyber field would understand the idea of the cyber scorecard, where that's a little bit of a service, self-assessment, but a little bit of trust but verify going on there as well. We think that's probably the way ahead, and so we've had some really good work going right now with a JADC2 maturity scorecard. Some have called it an aptitude scorecard. We're working on that language, but it really pulls out the essentials from the JADC2 strategy, the reference architecture, and then crosswalks that back against the initial posture review to ensure that the capabilities being developed are going to perform within the manner that's being prescribed within the JADC2 framework, and that it's not just something that an organization's running off on in a random direction. It ties back into an actual capability gap that's been prioritized and necessary for the department.
Yeah, sure. Good. So let's get into the details of it. So would we love to see a single network? Of course. There's a lot of reasons why a single network is to a great advantage. It's not realistic for the reasons that Rob just laid out. But now let's get into the problems that we're dealing with, and this is where we need help. If you look at the kill chain, one of the attributes that we're trying to drive is faster. We need the kill chain to close faster. For those of you who may not be familiar with the kill chain, it's 6 steps. The first 4 of them is I got to find it and I got to target it. Step 5 is the first time I actually do something about the target. Most of our time is consumed in the first 4 steps. In fact, it's 74% of our time, if you want to know, by when we evaluate this and exercise after exercise and we look at operations. So 74% of our time is consumed before we do a doggone thing about the target. 91% of that time is the manual movement of data from one domain to another. That is a professional who is typing it from one window into another window and hoping that the receiver on the other end sees it and we didn't fat finger or transpose some characters or some digits in the process of movement of the data. So it's really easy because you say, well, multiple networks create cross-domain solutions. How vulnerable are those? In fact, every cross-domain solution we create another vulnerability in the system, but yet we can't continue to move data manually. We cannot have 91% of our time just validating and targeting a target or an adversary system consumed in just the movement of the data. So when we start talking about networks and we start getting into the real problem sets, these are the problems we're struggling with today because we don't think we're going to go to a single network that's going to make this super smooth, and we're going to have to live with what we have.
Yeah, Spaniard's made some great points here. So a recent example of what we've looked at is we talk about what works well maybe for one service or other, competing ideas, maybe what folks on the Hill are asking us to look at for certain capabilities. This idea of bringing in translators, that induces latency into the network. You may be able to handle that if you're just passing administrative data across the network, but some of the examples that Spaniard are using where you're talking time-sensitive targeting, you probably don't want that extra millisecond or 2 in there. So within the JADC2 CFT, we brought in an external non-biased organization to take a look at stitches and tracks. Those are out there as translators. Both are working well, but there was a question that we owed back to some senior leadership. Is this something we could decide one or the other on? Could we stop investing in one, move to the other? And so we were able to get a team out there to really look at that. The initial look really showed us that they both, as of right now, were serving good functions in different areas. And it also gets back to that domain and service-specific areas of what may have been originally designed to work in one really well has not necessarily migrated to the other. And so our takeaway, whether it's talking tracks and stitches or anything else out there, we in the CFT really welcome multiple vendors, multiple levels of effort coming in. We value competitive ideas. We value the ability to really federate within the network to generate the ability to interoperate at speed, which is really essential for our warfighters.
Super discussion. I think we've got a question out here. You've been standing out there for a while. We'll lay it on us.
Is this on? Yep. So Spaniard and Rob, good to see you again. Glad that you guys are in that seat, very articulate. Spaniard replaced me as the JADC2, Air Force JADC2 cross-functional team lead, and now I'm sitting on this end, just switched over to the industry side. I'm with a UK company called Arkit. But on this side, obviously, and it's a question that I even still got out here, is how do industry partners integrate into, to your point, getting this bottom-up innovation, these vendors into these exercises? We know there's ABMS, we know there's convergence, we know there's overmatch, we know there's broad area announcements. On the JADC side, Joint Artificial Intelligence Center, there's trade wins, again, to try to leverage that in. But there's still no one shop that how do I get into a guide exercise if I don't know that pathway in. Primes have it a little bit easier, but it's the small innovation vendors that are out there that actually might have the solutions going forward. So in terms of just your thoughts, give us kind of, if you could just share what is the current state of what is that onboarding process for industry to get into these exercises and these various events? Do they still have to knock on the door of the services?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, you answered a lot of it during your question there as to how it's currently happening. And that is, it's still going to the services either through traditional routes or through some of these JADC2 aligned efforts, convergence, overmatch, ABMS. What we're trying to move towards, though, is I think you can expect, I can't give you the exact date, but sometime between January and February, we're looking to have a JADC2 Industry Day, where we'll be able to be a little more open, hopefully provide some more specifics to you, particularly if you are representative of small business efforts out there, to help give a little better glimpse and understanding of how to get in and get plugged in. From the CFT perspective, we do have that balance of looking across both those service contributing efforts, but additionally, as was highlighted, some of these combatant command level efforts as well, we're plugged into those. There's some ongoing discussions in the building that I can't really articulate in this forum right now as to how much or how little the CFT and joint staff will be involved in some of those. So great question. I know we owe you more on that. I think we as a department also have to come to terms and start understanding the changes in business models, particularly for the technology industry. You know, if we're putting out guidance and changing our contracts to align with our policy in terms of how we share data, who owns the data, what's government owned, what the vendor provides, we're wanting open source architecture, that sort of changes a lot of the traditional models that industry has relied on to generate income. And so I think we, as DoD, have to meet you at the table and really understand that doing business with industry is mutually beneficial to each of us, and it's also necessary for the good of our nation. And so, you know, from my perspective, industry absolutely has to earn money and make a profit off of it, or there's no incentive. It needs to be reasonable and prudent in the right areas. But the government also has to receive a benefit and not be locked into a system or program that's so proprietary in nature that it precludes our ability to share, exchange, and utilize that data that everybody has called, you know, either the ammunition of the next fight, the currency of today, whatever you want to describe that as. I think we can all agree it's really important. It's important for a lot of reasons that we know today, and it's also important for a lot of reasons that none of us have even realized yet of how it will be used.
Sir? You're good. Okay, great. Thank you very much. All right, we got another. This looks like a technology question coming our way.
Thank you. It is a technology question. Apologies for that. Patrick Tucker from Defense One. I wondered if I could go back to something that General Valencia said about accelerating that kill chain, those 6 steps. And what you describe is a sort of data structuring problem which would predate the use of an artificial intelligence solution, but is there some sort of AI solution, or are you closer to figuring out what that would be to remove some of those manual processes from that? And I have a secondary tech question after that, which is if you guys are any closer to figuring out, if not a unified network, an enterprise cloud environment, maybe an AWS, Azure, hybrid, very Cloud One-ish, that would be applicable across the services. Thanks.
I guess I'll take the first, and then, Rob, I'll let you jump on the second one. So is there an AI that will fix this? No, there's not one. Are there opportunities to introduce machine-to-machine movement of data that today is manually transferred? Are there opportunities to develop some algorithms that are going to accelerate our understanding of the data? Without a doubt. But it's really important to understand when we say kill chain, that's a little bit of a lazy term because we have to put it into context. So for example, there's a deliberate kill chain that oftentimes takes place at the operational level of war. So inside of a MOC, an AOC, a division TOC. And how do we plan, get the resources, get the authorities to go execute some objective at some point in the future, whether that's measured in typically days, could be longer. That kill chain requirement for the data movement is fundamentally different, and a lot of those processes that we use today to inform those decisions are run on Microsoft Office products. Good grief. When we're cutting and pasting from one version of Microsoft to another version, or we're looking at putting something into PowerPoint to put in front of a combatant commander or at the component level, we can do better. But there's also the kill chain at the tactical edge, which is how quickly can I take disparate pieces of data that are available in different platforms to assemble that data and make sense of that data and deliver it to the tactical edge so that we can close that kill chain much faster. Foundationally different problem set. Do we think that there are some algorithm-based aids that can enable that? Without a doubt. But to the point, today we just got to connect these systems. We can't even connect them in a very rapid way, much less build those algorithms. So I'll defer to the second half of the question over to Rob.
Yeah, I think that was really a great answer, and I would agree with Spaniard. I've personally seen technologies that are out there being used in some of these various environments, whether we're talking convergence, overmatch, ABMS, other areas across the department that are helping to generate better fire solutions in a time-sensitive manner in terms of, sensor to shooter, best shooter. Those types of things are good, but it's back to my earlier comment. JADC2 is more than just sensor to shooter. If your AI, predictive analytics, whatever your tool is, gives you the firing solution, but it doesn't have an understanding of your theater ammunition levels, where that ammunition is, what the predictive analytics would say your expenditure rates are going to be in this given part of the fight, then you're not getting the totality of the picture. So you're getting information, you're getting a decision, but it's not a high quality decision recommendation to that commander. So we're really looking to continue to push to bring in the broadest scope there. Back to the question on the cloud is an excellent question from my perspective because it helps me to articulate our vision forward as we set the JADC2 framework. JADC2, from the strategy that's laid out, the I-plan, and I should mention our releasable strategy should be out on the streets next week. We've gotten approval to put that out. So that will be out there. It may not be as fulfilling as some of you would like, but it at least gives you insight into where we're going. But the basic idea of being able to have this globally accessible data available in the right place at the right time is very much a cloud-based problem set. We're very interested in the LEO, the low Earth orbit capabilities. I'm particularly encouraged by what I see from some of our commercial vendors who are not only putting out those low Earth orbit constellations, but bringing in multi-cloud vendors onto those, which really help us move from the enterprise to the tactical edge in terms of speed, bandwidth, resiliency, redundancy, to what Spaniard was talking about. When you're at the tactical edge and you need time-sensitive solutions, PED-type information being processed, if we're using something as might be envisioned from the LEO constellation with other capabilities put on that through cloud-enabled environments that facilitate edge computing, understanding that there will need to be some types of tactical cloud capabilities that are survivable and can allow the units to continue to push through denied, degraded, intermittent, limited environments. That's sort of what we're thinking. Is it all satellite-based? No, of course we're thinking through fiber. We're thinking through other means of connectivity that are out there. And so this idea of enterprise to the tactical edge is extremely important. I don't think the future joint warfight can exist in an either-or environment for really what I alluded to at the beginning with this FIRES solution. You have to be able to connect into the enterprise, pull critical information, not everything, only what you need at that time and place, and really deliver it in a time-sensitive manner to enable time on target.
Okay, go ahead with your question, please.
Hi, Sean Ray with Impress. Thank you for your time today. And we did talk about a lot of different things, and one of the things you mentioned was the frustration on the data processing on the front end. And we hear a lot about, we just want the connectivity. We want to get the stuff off the terminals. We want to get it off these other systems. From a joint staff perspective, are we looking at joint data operations with better labeling, better streams, and then consolidation of that?
Absolutely. As part of one of those working groups that I mentioned, we have a data working group. And since January of this year, that's been meeting almost quarterly. And we've brought in all the chief data officers from across the combatant commands, the services, other industry experts to really help us think through the problem set that's in front of us. In fact, on 2 November, Cybercom and NSA are sitting down with that group to help us think through data labeling and maybe some ways that we haven't yet. Additionally, it would not be a surprise to this audience to know that we're absolutely very interested in establishing a data fabric supported by platform and a DevSecOps capability. I'll clarify that by saying we fully acknowledge the services, other organizations already have some of those capabilities. We're not trying to replace what they have. We're trying to help put the foundational elements into place so that they're not having to resource unnecessarily things that are unnecessarily duplicative across the environment, and really rely on what's needed to develop software solutions, other capabilities, and share that and abilities that we don't have, or in a manner that we don't have right now between those services. And so one particular area we're looking at is Platform One has demonstrated, while it may not be the ultimate solution, for us, we think that it's largely meeting the needs of the majority of what I would call customers out there. When we think about combatant commands, other services, some have already adopted it under a different name. We think there are some refinements necessary there, but that's an area that we're looking at. No formal decisions have been made, but it's a good partnership right now as we think about how we develop that, and particularly in a mission partner environment. As we work with the Mission Partner Capability Office, that's really what we're trying to build out, is this DevSecOps environment that can be connected to, utilized not only amongst our joint force, but reach in with our mission partner environments as well.
Great, thank you very much. Good question, and it really leads me to a follow-on that we talked about earlier, and that's, are the services going to line up to fall into this single solution, working together as a team? And I think the answer is absolutely yes on that, and I think we've heard that clearly. But what about our allies? How do they come into play with JADC2? And do you have some working relationships with any of them?
Mike, we have some outstanding working relationships. Specifically, when we think about the allies, already highlighted from really the beginning as we built out our JADC2 strategy, they were a part of that. They sit at the table with me, literally and figuratively, each month as we think about our Five Eye partners. When we talk about partners from a JADC2 perspective, though, it's more than just our trusted international military partners. It's federal, state, local, tribal, other government organizations and agencies. But specifically, when we think about developing both the mission partner environment and associated federated mission network, there's a lot of concern out there. Each theater is a little bit different. Combatant commands are different. Traditionally, we think of NATO in terms of bringing together a consolidated body, but it's very clear, as you've highlighted, Indo-PACOM, other combatant commands have their own unique requirements as well. And so we're working in conjunction, again, with the Mission Partner Capability Office, with DISA and other stakeholders to bring about the secret and below releasable environment, otherwise known as SABRE. Bold Quest is a demonstration we're putting on right now, actually happening this month. We have over 9 nations. We have 9 nations here participating in that, 4 of which are non-NATO countries. And this is really about starting to build out an initial operating capability and eventually a full operational capability of a persistent mission partner environment that will allow our known and trusted allies to join in and really help not only contribute, but for us to interoperate with them as well. But there's an important note to that, and this really, when we get back to thinking about data, when we think about trust, things like ICAM, zero trust environment, that has to be built into this, because I've heard senior leaders in the past few weeks really talk about it. There's certainly nations and countries today that we know very much where they stand on the global platform, meaning we know who they're aligned with. We've already, maybe in some cases, have very solid partnerships, treaties with them. Others, we probably know. But there are absolutely some countries out there that we don't know where they're going to stand, and we may not know where they stand in terms of, are they aligned with the U.S., or maybe are they going to align with some of our peer adversaries? We may not know that till the near last minute. And if so, they may only be aligned with us for some tentative period of time. How do we build a network that allows us to bring them in, have the trust necessary without totally opening the door to everything that we have? And then at our convenience, whether or not we need to sustain that relationship or it needs to be terminated after a certain mission or time period, we could do that. So that's part of the challenge, is building in that flexibility and trust needed.
Great, thank you very much. We're starting to run a little short of time, but I've got another question that I'd like to offer since we talked about the services, and each of the services really has a responsibility in working towards this common goal of JADC2. The Army is evaluating a program called Project Convergence. For General Parker, have you been able to observe the test, or a test, and what is being learned that could be implemented within the JADC2 program? And maybe you've had a chance to observe this too, I'm not sure. Sir?
Yeah, so thanks. So absolutely, I've been a part, got to go see Project Convergence last year. I've made some trips this year to be part of observing and participating in some of the comics and rehearsals that are ongoing. And both Lieutenant General Crowell, myself, will be out there at Project Convergence later this year. Without getting into specifics, there clearly a lot to be learned, not only in terms of specific technologies and capabilities, whether it's back to some of the automated fire solutions that are being looked at, but how we really build out the networks necessary to provide the bandwidth, the capacity, the survivability to integrate multiple aspects of capabilities that are being brought forward here in the future. From where I sit, though, it's much more than just one service. We've highlighted some of the others that are out there and their contributions. From a JADC2 perspective, as we look forward to the implementation plan hitting the street and really getting after outcomes for the next 12 to 18 months, we're focused on 6 to 7 key, what we would call key enabling technologies or focus areas. And you've heard some of these before, Zero Trust and ICAM. We're very interested in partnering with DISA as part of the Thunderdome effort there. We think there's a lot of good there. We're not sure that it's going to fully meet everything we need, particularly as we talk about mission partner environment. So we've still got a little homework to do, but we've got a great start there. As we look beyond Zero Trust, ICAM, back to the DevSecOps platform, I talked a little bit about what we're working with the Air Force on that effort. Data services in that environment would be associated with that. Certainly the cloud question we had, clouds on there, transport, I talked a little bit about the LEO piece, and then mission partner environment. So in each of those key 7 areas, we're looking for good partners that are out there. Some are already resourced effort. We just want to help be a part of the process and form and bring that in new and different ways. Sometimes we refer to it as minimal viable products. Sometimes we get pushback from maybe some of you in the audience, like, hey, that's really not a minimal viable product. We already have that. We acknowledge that. Some of these technologies are already mature. It's bringing them together really in this mission partner environment and under the JADC2 framework that's going to require some different thinking, some different policies, and different ways to connect it.
Great, thank you very much. I think we'd like to do, to kind of wrap this up right now, and I'd like to turn it over to General Valencia to maybe sum up some thoughts he might have as we wind up today.
I'll sum it up with this. Command and control is hard. And command and control tends to be very emotional. It's very organizationally dependent. It's very context dependent. But we can't just pigeonhole it into one solution. We can't pigeonhole it into one noun. It's not one verb. It's many things to many people. And what we have to do is partner with our joint partners as we have a great relationship, really excited about the framework and the structure that they're providing, which from a server's perspective means sometimes that we have to let go of some of our equities in order to be part of the whole. And we're in a good place with making those decisions. But really, very importantly, is we have to partner with you. And if you don't understand where we're going, then have us explain it and have us keep explaining it. If you don't understand the problem we're trying to solve, then stop us and have us define the problem. We're very uninterested in looking at solutions outside of the context of where it's going to apply to a problem that we've identified to solve. And understanding that relationship and having that discourse with you all is incredibly important if we're going to move this really difficult problem forward. Thanks.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, Mike, thanks so much for the time this morning. Spaniard, appreciate you joining me up here. It's great to be up here with one of our service partners, one of our key stakeholders. It really helps to bring this vision to reality. From where I sit, I'm very optimistic. I mean, are there challenges every day? Absolutely. I am confident, though, that our senior leadership has put forward through the JADC2 strategy, through the joint warfighting concept, a vision that is both necessary and is something that will absolutely deliver the strategic advantage that the United States needs both today and as we move forward. And I would just say, as Spaniard said, that's not something the department's going to solve on its own. We can't get out of our own way on many days. We absolutely rely on and need the industry partnerships. We need you to continue to call us out when you think we're not moving in the right direction. Make us aware of new and different things that are going on that are available out there. But just remain informed of where we are with how we're trying to exchange our data, use our data, be cognitive of that, and help us find that good middle ground that gets us all to a better place. So thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, sir. I will just say that for General Parker and General Valencia, thank you for taking time to be here today. It's really important that this message gets out to government, industry, academia for that matter, and having the two of you here really represent the joint services efforts towards this goal. You and your counterparts have a heavy lift, and you know it's in the news almost daily, and I know we're gonna reach that solution, and it's a must-have solution. I'll just also say, in lieu of a speaker gift, I wanted to give you a plaque, you know, with a big picture on it, but we're not going to do that. We're going to make a donation to the Fisher House on behalf of both of you today, and we do that for the entire conference overall to take care of some of our wounded warriors and get them back on their feet. I'd like to thank the audience for being here today. I know your interest is high, and thanks for being here this week also. And as a reminder, the DISA will have an industry day tomorrow, and everyone here who has a registration is invited to attend that. Our next session will be in the keynote space, will be JFHQ Doden, Fireside Chat, beginning at 12 noon. We'll see you then, and thanks for being here today.